kind of kick things off, I think the whole idea behind this panel is to help businesses and restaurants who are thinking about maybe how to have a little bit more of an environmentally friendly footprint get there. And so on the panel today, we have a few different Austin-based businesses and organizations that have kind of gone above and beyond in pursuing a strong environmental strategy for their businesses or organizations. For a little background for people who aren't familiar with Austin's own policies, in 2013-ish, our city passed something called the URO. It's called the Universal Recycling Ordinance, which basically kind of kicked off a series of regulations that made it so businesses had to start recycling at first, and now composting has also been added to that mix. So by October 1st of this year, basically all businesses that have some kind of food service component are going to have to offer composting services for their back of the house. So their employees have to have access to composting. And so for some businesses that can seem like a super overwhelming thing if they're really not used to it. And so hopefully on the panel today you'll hear from some businesses who have done it, who have decided to hit that URO mark early and kind of exceed the city's expectations and why they decided to go that path. And how they went about it. So hopefully we can answer some of your questions. So I think I want to kick things off with Darien Clary down at the end there. She is AISD Sustainability Manager. She works for the school district. And the school district has really taken this upon themselves to not just start recycling and composting in all their facilities, but to teach their students how to do so as well. So Darien, you want to start things off?
All right. Thank you, Amy. I'll take it away. Can you guys hear me? Yes. Okay. We are in Austin at the Austin Independent School District, and let me advance the slide here. So we do some interesting marketing within AISD because we're very proud to be from Austin. So we like to keep it weird, and also known for skinny jeans and smarty pants. So we take that we use Austin in a way, the culture to really help advance sustainability. And I would say that's one strategy that we use at the school district. And even if you're not in a city that has ordinances maybe as strong as Austin's in terms of waste diversion, think about other strategies and how you can sort of tie it to bigger things that are going on in your community. That's one thing that's been really helpful for sort of furthering sustainability at AISD. All right, so to give you a quick background, we've got, 17 high schools, 18 middle schools, 85 elementary schools, and 10 facilities. So we have about 82,000 students, about 130 schools and facilities, and we're one community. Even though we have a diversity within our community, all of our schools are very different from one another. When we say one community, it's kind of nice from a waste perspective because that means that we can do district-wide initiatives that really touch across the whole district and all the schools. All right, where's the computer for this? There we go. So within my world, I've got 8 action areas, and waste is one of them. So the other ones are energy and water, waste procurement, obviously, transportation and air quality, and then food and nature. And in each of these initiatives throughout the district, we really look at the programming in terms of teaching and learning. So how are we engaging our students? How are we building capacity in our future leaders that are going to run our community someday? And then how are we thinking about infrastructure and operations? So how are we setting up, in terms of waste, an infrastructure is something that we can do that's functional, hopefully without causing a lot of extra work for our custodial staff. So we'll talk about that in a minute too. And then of course community engagement, recognizing that AISD is such a big part of the Austin community. So how are we really helping the community advance its sustainability goals as well? So today we're going to talk specifically about waste, which is one of those action items. All right, so the City of Austin's zero waste goal is to divert 90% of waste from the landfill by 2040. That's hugely, hugely ambitious, but we're doing it. We're on our way. And so, like I said, AISD is such a big part of the Austin community that we're on board with it, and we really want to help Austin achieve that goal too. And we have the really great opportunity to work with our youngsters. And so we can really pair operations with education and start building that value within our students. So let's see. We've also got a couple of initiatives underway. obviously rolling out food waste composting at all of our facilities. We have it at over 100 cafeterias so far, and this year we're going to be rolling it out in the final schools so that by the end of the school year, all 100% of our schools will have cafeteria composting. We also have a multi-year plan to eliminate styrofoam. I grew up in Austin, and I'm a proud graduate of Austin ISD, and I moved away for a long time. I came back and was appalled to see that they had reverted to using styrofoam. When I went through the system, it was the hard plates that got washed, the trays with the little separators. And so luckily, we have a really great food services director who's on board as well, and they realize in the food services realm how much their decisions can really impact waste for the district. And so they're working with us to eliminate styrofoam. And then we also get monthly recycling and composting data available for each school, and that's from our hauler. Our vendor is Texas Disposal Systems, and so that really helps us know, track our progress and see how we're doing in terms of composting and recycling, and then reach out to schools if there's something where we look like there could be more done at a particular school. All right. So one of the things that we found, I'm going to talk a little bit about some tips that we found within the school district because I think it's transferable to a lot of businesses when you're thinking about waste reduction and landfill waste diversion. So we found that consistent color is really important to make it very easy for people to recognize what bin to use. So we coordinated our color with the City of Austin and with Texas Disposal Systems. So we're all speaking the same language when it comes to recognition. So recycle is always blue, compost is always green, and landfill is usually a gray or a black. And then at the school district, working with the kids too, we have landfill bins are always on the left for L, compost is always in the center for C, and recycle is always on the right. And it's really important to pair those bins so that when you get to one waste station, you have all three options together. We found in the past people would put, a recycle bin and a landfill bin on either side of a doorway, sort of for symmetry, but that even was too far for people to go. So really, you just have to pair them so they're all together. We also recognize that the graphics are really important and the words you use on the signs. And so with kids, we want to make sure that our signs can be recognized and educational regardless of language and regardless of reading ability. And so that's why you see a lot of just graphics on here, and we try to make it match what's coming out of our cafeterias so the kids can easily see, oh, I've got this material, I got it from the food service line, and it goes in this bin. And so we've really worked a lot with TDS to co-design this latest iteration of our signage so that it's really easy to use in our schools. AISD has a really large population of Spanish-speaking families and English language learners. Our other languages are Vietnamese and Arabic are the second and third. And so we recognize that a full English sign may not resonate with everybody, so we make sure there's a lot of graphics too. And then a lot of our food services and custodial staff speak Spanish, and so we give our trainings to them in Spanish. We also, this has been very, very helpful, color-coded bags. So we make sure that in our recycle bins, we have a clear bag. Oops, let me advance that one too. There we go. In our compost bins, we have a green bag. And in our landfill bins, we have a black bag. Because what that does is when whoever's managing that waste, when they pull the bag out, if you have the same color bag in every bin, they may not necessarily know what dumpster that needs to go to. And we're not going to ask our custodial staff to sort waste. It needs to be sorted when it gets in the bin. And so this has been really helpful for them to be able to pull it and know exactly where it goes. If they get outside, sometimes it's nighttime when they're servicing our schools, so we can't expect them to get out to dumpsters in the dark and have to sort through or see what's in that bag. So they know if it's a clear bag, it goes to recycle. If it's a green bag, which is a compostable bag, it goes into the composting dumpster. And if it's a black bag, it goes to landfill. So that's been really helpful from a process perspective. All right. And then we also recognize the importance of having our waste stations in really strategic locations. We were doing a waste audit one time, or a bin audit, and realized that there were 6 recycle bins in a very small, maybe an area as big as, this cluster of chairs over here, which is really, really great intent. Like, I get what they were getting at, but when you have a proliferation of bins, it causes a lot more work because you have to empty all those bins. At the time, we were buying liners for all those bins. Liners, depending on the size of the bin, the smallest one's little 7 gallons, it's $0.015 a bag, which doesn't sound like a lot, but over 130 schools and almost thousands of rooms, it adds up really quickly, especially when those bags are being changed out frequently. So we work with schools now to have waste stations in really strategic locations. And so at high schools, it works a little better to have bins in the corridors and not in the classrooms at all. This also works really well at the college level, which I've worked in as well. But just really thinking through how to channel as much waste into a waste station that is well signed, it has the proper bags, and it makes it really easy for the custodial staff to service. We had a situation where custodians, well, it still happens, they can't go in classrooms when they're being used for education. And so I had a lot of feedback from custodians saying that waste management was so hard for them because they had to time when they were going to empty the bags for when the classes were in session. And then we were getting pest problems in a lot of the rooms as well, because then trash would sit there. If the custodian couldn't get to it during their shift, it would sit overnight. So it was causing a lot of issues. And by pulling the bins out of the classrooms and sticking them in the corridors, the custodians loved it. They just had to go down a hallway. They could service the bins really well. We had good signage in the classroom saying, "Where is the bin? It's in the hallway." So there was a little bit of behavioral training that went along with that. We found that the students got on board right away. It was often the teachers that had a little bit of pushback, but after one semester, we didn't hear any complaints whatsoever. In fact, we started hearing really good stuff from both operational staff, teaching staff, and students. So that's just something to think about when you're planning your waste diversion and making it easy and thinking about strategy and where you're putting your bins. We also found that a really great opportunity was paper towel composting. If you do have paper towels in your restroom and you're not using hand dryers, this is a really great way to get some of that material into compost and divert it from the landfill. We found that in the restrooms, we still need to offer a landfill bin because there is some landfill waste that comes in the restrooms. But in restrooms with paper towel machines, it's pretty much all paper towels, and so that was a really easy switch to make. I will say, if you can avoid using compostable bags and not have any bag whatsoever, that's going to save you a lot of money. So think about your process. One thing we did, we had one campus that had 40 restrooms, and it was going to be cost prohibitive to have to empty the bag every day because those bags were about $1 each. And each bag at the time got emptied about twice. So that would be $80 a day just to do composting. So we said, we got to rethink this. That's not going to happen. And so we worked with the custodians. They actually came up with the solution, which was wonderful. What happens now is they carry a large rolling bin. You can see an example with it with them. They go to a restroom. They still pick up the bin. It's a smaller, I think 23-gallon, the rectangle bins. They pick it up, so it's lightweight. They dump the paper towels into this rolling bin, and then they compress them in that rolling bin. And the rolling bin does have a liner. It has one bag. But then they can do that and service all the restrooms without having to pull a bag from every restroom. So we went from a projected 80 bags a day use to just 2 bags a week. So think through your process. And that also made it really easy for the custodians because they weren't having to go dump that bag in the dumpster all the time. They just waited until that rolling bin filled up with compressed paper towels, and they just took that one bag out to the dumpster. Let's see. Oh, and this was really nice too because this didn't require a behavior change on the part of the occupants of the restroom. They still went and washed their hands, we assume. They still used a paper towel. And they still put it in a bin. But what changed was that bin now had signage saying, "Thank you for composting. This is for paper towels only." And we only had to work with 5 custodians to change that behavior rather than the 2,000 people that were using that building every day. Another thing that really helped, and this was the custodians requested that the bin that they used, the rolling bin, be labeled compost. So that gave building occupants the information that was going to the compost bin. They really wanted people to know if it was in a gray trash bin, then people would assume that it was just going to go to the landfill, that the custodian would just put it in the landfill bin, in the dumpster. So we made sure that the bin they were using to roll that compost around really said compost loud and proud. Let's see. Also, so I talked a little bit about the data that's been available. Since I have some data starting 2011, and since 2011, we've diverted almost 20,000 tons of waste from the landfill, both in recycling and composting. And so I would say if you're able to get that data, that's going to be really important for you to be able to pinpoint where you guys need to improve. So think through when you're designing your programs for composting and recycling how to track that. And it's really helpful to work with your hauler to do that too. So I'm going to talk about a few key partners. These are ones obviously that are key for the school district, but in your realms of working, you're going to have community partners that also have goals, whether it's for engagement or waste diversion. And so I really recommend reaching out to them because you can harness a lot of resources that way and really build a successful program that meets a lot of different goals. So, of course, we work with the TDS Eco Academy. So this is really great because, as I mentioned before, we definitely need to work on our operations for composting and recycling, but at the school, we have such an opportunity to build that knowledge and that activism in our students so that when they become decision makers for our communities, this is something that they value. And so we've been working with Eco Academy to enroll their Eco Academy program at our schools to really get kids involved. We also work with EcoRise, and they help with design thinking around an array of sustainability issues. And a lot of kids, we find that kids really grab onto garbage, gardens, and green teams. And so we really, when we're thinking about engagement, really want to boost those programs for our students because we know those are the gateways into sustainability thinking. Also, EcoSchools USA is really great. They have a pathway for becoming a green flag school, and we have at AISD the first green flag high school in Texas was at Eastside Memorial High School, but they have a waste pathway, so students can engage and retool their schools for handling waste a little bit better. And so there are green business certifications, all sorts of things that might get you guys some good recognition for your efforts too. And I would really recommend looking into those opportunities because those partners can help you. We also enrolled composting at Fulmore Middle School. We had about 1,000 students who participated in the rollout that day. We did a really fun training. The principal got up and did a skit. TDS was a big part of that to help not only with the operations of that, but really getting those kids involved and thinking through how to engage their students, making signs. And then here's the students. They took it upon themselves to make their own signs too, and then they taped them to the tables in the lunchroom. So as people eat, they are looking at the stuff that they've got, and they are going to know what bin it has to go into. So in a restaurant setting, that might be something to think about too. And we also, one thing I should mention is that we work with our hauler to, let me go back, these are fun, to pick materials that are going to be accepted in the compost system. Food services, we have cartons, milk cartons and juice cartons that we worked with TDS to make sure they could be accepted. So then it goes all the way back to procurement and what kind of materials you're going to procure as well. So think about the end result and where they need to go and then start working backwards to see how you can find vendors that have materials that can be recyclable or compostable to help you reach your goals. So to conclude, I'm just going to show you some fun visuals. We had a green meme contest at Earth Day this year, and we had a lot of submissions. So these are some of the top ones that got the most votes about waste. But this was one kiddo obviously needs to practice his aim. He's getting in the wrong bin. This was the winner, that recycling bins get hungry too. And then there was the straw one that I might have let me go back. Whoop, whoop. There it is. This was my personal favorite, the one where the kid's calling out the teacher about using a straw. So that kind of goes back into the materials you're bringing into your business as well. If you're not serving people straws, then you're not going to have that waste stream to get rid of. Same with styrofoam, same with bags. All little things, there's small tweaks you can make in your business practice that really have a big difference in terms of waste. So I think that's it for me. I'm going to hand the mic over. Let's make sure. There we go.
All right.
Thank you guys for listening.
Thank you, Darien. I just want to just point out two things you mentioned that I hear a lot of people say. One, working with your custodial staff really closely. I've heard that over and over and over again, that you can have like the best waste diversion plan in the world, but if the people who are actually in charge of taking the stuff out of your restaurant or business and putting it into the appropriate bins are not on board, then it's never going to work. And that a lot of times the best ideas for how to make a system work more efficiently come from exactly those people who do it every day. And so engaging them early, I think, is like an excellent tip. And also the sign is huge. I know this is for kids and it seems like it's exaggerated, but like adults need the same amount of signage as kids, if not more. It's difficult to learn, and I think that like really clear signage, even if you have at your restaurant like the exact picture or exact napkin that you have and like put it, I've seen people like even post that to the signage, like this napkin goes in this bin, you know, because you use the same types of materials. As easy as possible, I think always is the way to go. Okay, great. I want to shift now to a business in Austin. We have Nadine here from the W Austin. Nadine Thomas, she's the director of beverage and food with the W Austin. You want to talk some about what you guys have done there?
Awesome. Yes, for sure. Great work being done at AISD. And I just want to say thank you to them because a lot of people come to our business and they're already trained a little bit, which helps us a lot. So just a little bit about where we are. We're the W Austin, 251 guest rooms, and then we have 159 residential units on top. We have a restaurant, we have a large bar, we have a big pool, we have 10,000 square feet of meeting space, we have a spa. It's a mixed-use facility with a Starbucks and Urban Outfitters and multiple businesses inside the building, and all of those use one trash and recycling dock. So it's a lot of people to try to get on track. So we created a green team at the hotel, and our mission is to create a culture of reuse and recycling, enable us to meet our goal to divert 70% of our waste from the landfill. So we haven't quite gotten to 70%. We're at about 65 right now. We use TDS as well, and we get all the same reporting that AISD does, and it's been super helpful because without it, we wouldn't really know where we were at. But you can see that we have the same kind of signage for the adults. And we have a lot of adults in the building. We have about 350 people that work in the hotel, and then all the other people that work in the other businesses. So what we've done to help educate everybody is we've had expert training partners from TDS to come out, and they go department by department. So as you can imagine, in the culinary department, we have some kind of trash. We have a lot of food, we have a lot of plastic, we have a lot of cans. But then you go to our spa and they have all kinds of different trash. You go to our engineering department and they all of a sudden have batteries and bits of glass and metal and all kinds of stuff. So it really took a strong partnership with TDS for them to come out and help each department to figure out how is the best to use recycling and composting in their area. So some of the other programs that we have are Make a Green Choice, and this one is where we try to actually educate the guests that are staying at the hotel. So when you check in, you have the option to say, I would like to have my room cleaned only every 3 days instead of every day. And so we've been able to save a lot of water that way, and we reward the guests that choose that. So right from the time that they check in, we start talking about sustainability right then. So that's been like really helpful for us. We find guests that are coming up to us with their plastic bottle and being, I know you guys recycle here, where can I put this? And we take care of it for them. We also participate in Clean the World, which is really an interesting one. We collect up all the little bits of soap bars that are left over, and we ship them to a company that makes them back into a bigger bar and helps people in need to have soap or shampoo. Clutter-free meetings. So if you've been to a meeting before, you might have gone there where there's paper and pens at every seat, and people just start scribbling and wasting paper and pens. So we put them all in the back of the room, and you have to go get it if you really need it, not necessarily just scribbling away for the fun of it. We've partnered also with Keep Austin Fed to donate leftover food. And one of my personal favorites that I'm in charge of, so we have a green team, you know, and it's hard with adults. Children maybe find it a little more fun, but with adults it's hard to get them so engaged with this. So we call it Trash Talking Tuesday, and it's the first Tuesday of every month, and we have a little newsletter, and we try to get people excited to come to the meeting and talk about trash. But we've created a lot of great things from that meeting. So one of the things that we did, I always forget where the computer is. We've had quarterly campaigns. So we noticed that in our employee dining room, people were just going and getting big sleeves of paper cups because they wanted to go get their coffee and take it to their desk or wherever they were going. And we kept seeing all this paper cups. And so we started doing some research on what is the harm of a paper cup. And it's actually really, really bad for the environment. And unfortunately, when you have this composting program, a lot of people are like, well, it's a paper cup, I'll just put it in the compost. It's fine, it doesn't matter. And we're like, no, not really. It's actually not that great for the environment, and we don't really need to be creating more compost just so you can have your coffee. So we did a campaign to bring us your ugly mug. And so we had a contest for a whole month long, and everybody could bring their most ugliest mug to work to get their coffee or water or juice or whatever it was that they were getting. And it was hugely successful. Everybody was bringing their mugs. We had pictures all over the place. And now we don't have any paper cups in the cafeteria at all. So it was a great success. We did another one where we focused on reducing water. And that was another one where we looked around and we found that we were automatically setting the whole banquet room, like it'd be 200 people for lunch and everybody had water and iced tea. And so we were like, wow, that's kind of crazy. So we stopped putting the iced tea and we asked the client ahead of time, you know, or we'll just offer iced tea to each person and try to reduce water that way. We also found that in our in-room dining, they were just automatically taking water to every single guest, no matter if they wanted water or not. So we started asking the guest if they wanted water with their meal or if they were just going to use the water that was in the room or whatever, and we were able to save 110 gallons in 1 month just from asking guests if they wanted the water. So that was another huge success. And I think the thing to keep in mind with these is that every time we did it, we were increasing awareness of recycling as a whole. Then we had plastic oceans awareness, and we did a really great contest where you could create art from the trash you found in the hotel. So we had an art show, we did a whole launch, they brought all their art down, we had a reception in our green room. It was really fun, and the same thing, everybody started thinking about plastic straws and plastic bottles and the damage that does to the environment. We participate a lot in Ride to Work Month. It's very similar, again, it's just all different ways of focusing on compost and recycling and what we can do. We always participate in Earth Day. We make crossword puzzles. We have all kinds of fun. We make sure that we try to get people out to Earth Day. And then with the residents, as you can imagine, 160 residents on top of the hotel. And we found that they were just throwing everything down the trash chute, no matter what. And it was causing a problem for us with the trash chute being clogged. And plus, they weren't recycling. So we started a program with them where we rewarded everybody who composted, and we actually bought them the compostable bags and we delivered it to their units, and we had our ambassadors go back upstairs and bring their compost down for them. And now we probably have about 80% of the residents that are actually composting and recycling. But it took a rewards program. We gave them free money to go to the restaurant and all that kind of stuff to get them to do it, but it worked. Oh, and that's the end of me. But I just wanted to also point out that we do the green, blue, and black, and we have it on the wall, and there's another wall when you enter the green room that gives out our weights. So we update it monthly to show the weight of each of the streams. But the color coding is one of the super most important. So when the students come to us, they already know the color coding. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Nadine. And next we have Ryan Beard with Texas Disposal Systems. And Ryan does a lot of work with different businesses and clients on helping them kind of adopt these waste diversion plans. So you want to take it off?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you guys all for coming out here today. I want to thank the partners up here. They make our job a lot easier. When you have a restaurant or hotel or a school district that really wants to partner, and really the success that we have had as a company in food waste diversion comes from those companies that really embrace this. Food waste diversion, it's coming, period. All right? So you can take it one of three ways. You can try to reject it for as long as you possibly can, and then legislation will eventually catch up with you. Or you can do the bare minimum, which is you're going to pass the city inspections if you have legislation. Most of your customers will kind of understand it, but probably not because it hasn't been fully embraced. Or you can really embrace it and say, it's coming, let's get on the forefront of this and really have our customers understand why we're doing it and try to play off of that in a PR standpoint, to be honest with you. A lot of our customers that have really excelled at food waste composting are touting it all the time. They are getting, their clientele is coming in because they tout that they are green. And so leading into that, this is not me, all right? This is Jason Sabala. He was supposed to be here today. He couldn't make it, so you guys got me instead. But Jason has been a restaurant entrepreneur for many years in Austin, and he has really embraced living green. He puts his money where his mouth is. He puts his education and training in his staff. He takes his time away from doing other things in his restaurant so that he can make sure they are diverting as much waste as possible. Recycling has been talked about now in America since World War II, essentially, all right? We are respectable, I guess, in the United States on how much we're recycling at this point. We've come a long way. Food waste diversion is this new thing. What is composting? What is compostable? One way that I describe it all the time is if it was alive once, it can be composted. So we go through that with the students in the schools. We do it with restaurant owners, with the staff. Listen, is a napkin compostable? Well, no. Yeah, it came from a tree. So yes, the tree was alive once. It's compostable. So we go through that process to make sure people understand that. We also give them what happens to that once it leaves your restaurant, once you took the time and the money and the training and the effort. Where does it go to? Well, it goes to a compost facility and we make soil again out of it. All right? It goes back to the earth. So there is a round, a circle of life there. Jason is really good at showing this circle of life at his restaurants. So they are a coffee house. They have several locations in Central Texas. They not only embrace it for their food waste diversion, but as a restaurant as a whole, you know immediately that this is a green restaurant. You go in, they have certain products that they have, that they serve, a lot of stuff that they don't serve, straws and unnecessary trash. They really try to keep as much of that away from their customers as possible. The Austin URO that was talked about, the Universal Recycling Ordinance, is green legislation saying that you are going to do this. Jason, before that was passed, really took the time to say, we're going to go above and beyond. We want to find a partner. He found Texas Disposal System because we have trash, recycle, and compost. So it was really easy for him to say, hey, you guys do all three. Let us embrace that. Come on in, train us. We took their staff actually to our landfill, compost, and recycle facility. It's all on one campus there in South Travis County. And we brought their staff out to help them understand, why are we doing this? Where does it go? How is it diverted? So they have the they have the whole story that they can tell their customers when they come in. Jason also embraces, he has a lot of fun things that he does in his restaurant to promote green activities. So go to his website, Buzzmill Restaurants, or Buzzmill Coffee House, I think is what it is. And they do canning, they do what do they call it? Beekeeping, thank you. I was like, what do they call that? So he does a lot of things like that to help people understand why they're being green. Again, with the signage, you're going to hear that over and over again. We have to tell people, we have to educate people. Recycling's talked about all the time, although it's still confusing. We understand that. Recycling is confusing. But it's because we constantly are changing what can be recycled. And sometimes we take the opposite direction. This stuff can't be recycled anymore, or let's start diverting it completely out of the stream, like styrofoam. It is not good, period. It is cheap. And so a lot of restaurants embrace styrofoam because it's cheap. But if we can start getting rid of styrofoam, that's going to be the next push. Straws, styrofoam. When we went into Hayes ISD, they used to give a packet that had a plastic liner on it, a napkin, a straw, a spork, and gave it to every single student. And when we went in there, we said, let's separate that. Let's separate. And he's like, no, I don't want to, because it's really easy to give a student. I said, yeah, but if you separate it, almost no kid will take a straw, number one. So you're getting rid of a lot of straws. Number two, you have the plastic liner on there that you're getting rid of, which is a pain in our compost facility. Three, almost no child takes a napkin. Sorry. So they just don't take napkins. So they reduced their napkin consumption by 90%. It's kind of gross, but it's a way of saying, hey, how are we going to pay for this process? We are going to start taking away individual ketchup packets. So we have pump jars now in those, because it's another way of getting rid of that material that the kids don't need, that gets into the compost that we cannot compost. All right, so it's all encompassing. Jason has done that very well. Again, with the signage, he really tries to embrace this in his restaurants. I would love to work with you guys on that, train you guys on that. That is something we love to do. That's it. I think that we have some question and answer time at this point.
Yeah, we've
Thank
got
you,
a
guys.
few minutes for question and answer. I'll kick things off with a quick question or two, and then we'll kick it over to you guys. I want to kind of harp on one thing that you mentioned. I think when you're thinking about your whole waste stream, one thing that it's good to think about is kind of what's the best thing. And like you mentioned, sometimes the best thing is just getting rid of a certain type of product that really there's not a great disposal solution for, or that is being used even though people don't really want it or need it, and it wouldn't really bother them if it were gone. Things like straws and styrofoam, that's now also in the social media space starting to get a lot of heat and pushback. So it's pretty easy to take away a straw when not that many of your customers like it, and then you can market it and say, look how awesome I am, I don't have straws now. And then kind of going down that line, another thing that comes up a lot with food, I know Nadine, you touched on this, I wanted to have you maybe talk a little bit more about it, is composting, of course, is great for your food scraps, especially as you're cooking, you've got all this leftover stuff. But donating it is also another great option, and another way that you can also then find a really good community partner and share what you're doing with your customers. Nadine, can you talk a little bit about that? Because I think a lot of businesses are really scared about the idea of food donation or how that might work. And I'll pass you this mic.
That's okay. Yes, we partner with Keep Austin Fed, and it's mainly because they're really, really easy to work with. They come and pick stuff up right when we call them. And most of the waste that we have comes from the conference center area that we have. So we can have, a function for 200 people, and they want whole apples, and then only 50 people take an apple. So we have all those apples left. We can call them. They'll come right over. They have volunteers that pick it up with their own cars and take it to families in need and distribute it in small amounts to them. So it's worked out really well for us, and we find that our associates are really proud to participate in that program.
Great. We are running short on time, so I want to make sure I let the audience ask any questions. Does anyone have any questions for any of our panelists?
In the school district,
I'll repeat it. I can repeat it.
do you do any on-campus composting? That you see any of that come back to school?
Okay, so the question was for the school district, do they do any on-campus composting, and do the kids get to see that, or is that compost kind of used on campus somewhere? So Nate, you want to do that? Yeah.
That's a great question. So composting happens in a variety of different ways. The big way we work with TDS is our cafeteria composting. So the kids are involved in that because they eat it, they sort it, and it happens on a large scale there. That is so much volume that we use a commercial compost facility for that. But a lot of schools also do their own smaller scale composting, whether it's for their gardens. We have a lot of chickens at a lot of our schools, and so they kind of tie that into, they have compost piles tied into sort of from an agricultural perspective. So it happens across the district, yeah. And those sort of school-based initiatives are usually managed by a teacher group or an environmental club or a student group, and they kind of self-manage. They have oftentimes, bins. The students turn them. They work it into their curriculum. So they're learning the whole process of compost, basically from whatever they throw into it until whatever comes out and they put it on their garden. And then we also get, so TDS also takes our food waste, combines it with all of their other clients and turns it into compost at their site. So we can also buy back compost that came from our schools, which is kind of fun to tell that story too, because kids can see, oh, this is now a product in the market that came from our efforts at school. So it's really fun to kind of close that loop and show students that what the action that each individual takes really can have a big difference.
Any other questions in the audience? We'll bring you the mic.
Maybe we'll just, yeah.
Well, I haven't really even figured out my question.
Right.
When are schools in Austin going to be required to get to zero waste?
So schools in Austin, the city has the zero waste ordinance. And so we are holding ourselves to that. And so the school district, well, the city requires it. So we're on board. The school district is a different taxing authority, so technically, I hate saying this, but the law doesn't apply, but it does. We hold ourselves to it because, again, we're such a big part of the city. We're teaching the youth of our city. We really need to make sure that we're on board. So we started composting. I just got this scoop from Ryan in the green room, 2009 with TDS, which is way before the time I was on board with AISD. And so really it started back then. And a lot of it too, of course, waste diversion is hugely important, but really our opportunity to educate kids around this is a big motivator for AISD as well.
And Darien, I think Ryan wants to chime in on that.
I just wanted to say that Austin ISD has really led a lot of this. They are way past legislation in leaps and bounds. So the city really probably looked at Austin ISD and said, look at how much they're diverting, look at how much food waste they're diverting, how can we get this to other restaurants? So really, the legislation probably started by saying, oh, look, they've done it, we can do this in Austin, let's push this on.
And
Sorry.
Sorry, not sorry. Okay, so the question is, do we just do food waste, or is it also paper, yard trimmings and things like that? So in the cafeterias, it's just food waste because that's what's coming out of the cafeterias. The school-based initiatives, they often will do trimmings and things like that. We don't have a huge, our landscaping is mostly just mowing. And so that doesn't get bagged, it just kind of gets left on the field. So we actually don't have a whole lot of yard trimming waste. It could be later down the line something to target, but right now we're looking at the big volume stuff and what we can divert there.
And I'll add on to that, you know, a city can have regulations all they want. You know, the city of Austin has these big ambitious goals and a bunch of rules to try and get us there, but in all honesty, they really need buy-in from the community. You know, you can say that everyone has to recycle all day long, but if the community's not on board and they don't know how to do it, or they're not really into the composting thing, then they're not going to get the numbers they want. I think that's what's cool about W Austin. Like, you guys have exceeded the city's own you know, percent of waste diversion. And a lot of it is just that you really have to make sure your community or your employees are on board with it, which I think is a cool thing. We're pretty much at the end of our time. Maybe we have time for one more question if anyone has anything burning. We'll be up here, I guess, if anyone has anything else. It's 10:45 on the dot, so we'll end it. Thank you guys so much for coming out.